item on our agenda is a welcome by our CEO, Dr. Marcia Akechi. Dr. Akechi, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Senator, the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Business, Mr. Kevin Hunt, Chairman of the Fair Trading Commission, Mrs. Tammy Bryan, Chief Executive Officer of Digicel Barbados Limited, Ms. Natalie Abrams, Senior Director, Head of Communications, Cable and Wireless Communications, Ms. Marlene Seeley, Director of Consumer Protection with us at the Fair Trading Commission, Mrs. Deva Leslie Ward, partners, specially invited guests, the media, the FTC team. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the launch of the Mobile Telecommunications Code 2023. In this digital age, where mobile connectivity and technological advances are inextricably linked to our business activities, and might I say our quality of life, we cannot overlook the challenges and vulnerabilities that consumers may face. It is therefore of the utmost importance that we at the Fair Trading Commission ensure that the rights of Barbadian consumers are protected. With the advent of the Mobile Telecommunications Code, which was implemented by the service providers on October 1st, 2023, that is both Digicel and Cable and Wireless, the Commission has proactively sought to safeguard consumer rights by promoting transparency and fair practices which ultimately assist consumers while navigating the digital stratosphere. Today, we recognize not only the establishment of the code itself, but also the collaborative spirit between government agencies, service providers, and consumer advocates that has brought it to fruition. The Telecommunications Code is not just a document to us at the Commission. It is a commitment and promise to Barbadian consumers that their needs are at the forefront of our collaborative efforts. As we embark on this journey, it is now our shared responsibility to uphold the principles outlined in the code and to continue to put consumers at the forefront of everything we do. The moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adley Akechi. I can tell you as the team lead for this particular project that we did not only have that support at the senior management level, but at the board level as well. And as such, I would like to invite the chairman of the FTC board, Mrs. Tammy Bryan, to give some remarks.
Senator, the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business Development, Mrs. Natalie Abrams, Chief Executive Officer, Digicel Barbados Limited, Ms. Marlene Seeley, Senior Director, Head of Communications, Cable and Wireless Communications, specially invited guests, commissioners, particularly Commissioner Genevieve Maynard, the Chair of the Consumer Protection Committee, CEO and staff of the Commission, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It gives me great pride to welcome you to the launch of the Mobile Telecommunications Code 2023. This code, developed in execution of the FTC's mandate to safeguard and protect the interests of consumers, has 5 main objectives. 1, to make it easier for individual consumers to understand the information in their mobile telecommunications contracts. 2, to establish consumer-friendly business practices and increase stakeholder confidence in the mobile telecommunications industry. 3, to create procedures governing consumer interactions, including advertisements and representation of services, complaint handling and billing. 4, to increase compliance with the Consumer Protection Act and other consumer legislation in Barbados. And 5, to provide guidelines for self-regulation within the industry. The code was developed by the Commission in response to a combination of factors, including most significantly an increased number of consumer complaints and information derived from a survey administered by the Commission. Between 2013 and 2015, the Commission received 24 telecommunication complaints and queries. That number increased between 2016 and 2019, rising to in excess of 86 complaints and queries. Some of the issues raised related to advertisements, contract terms, data usage, and high charges. These grievances highlighted the urgent need for a well-thought-out solution that could protect consumers from unfair trading practices while simultaneously promoting the service provider's adherence to the Consumer Protection Act. The results of the survey conducted by the Commission in 2019 also revealed consumer dissatisfaction in the mobile sector. Consumers expressed concerns that their rights were not adequately protected and that there was a lack of accountability on the part of the providers. The results of the survey were shared with each service provider and ultimately supported the development and implementation of the code that we're launching today. The Board of the Fair Trading Commission takes consumer protection matters very seriously and wanted to carefully monitor the development of the code and other emerging consumer protection issues. As a result, a Consumer Protection Committee comprising 3 board members was convened and chaired by Commissioner Genevieve Maynard, who's here today. The primary role of that committee is to oversee, monitor, and track the organization's consumer agenda by critically examining local, regional, and international consumer protection projects and developments. The committee also meets with staff monthly and receives reports on consumer complaints, queries, and consumer projects. While overseeing the development of the code, Commissioner Maynard and her team emphasized that fairness, transparency, and timeliness needed to be the undergirding principles of the code. Therefore, once the first draft of the code was finalized by the staff, they keenly supported a collaborative stakeholder approach. This included consulting and meeting regularly with the service providers and key stakeholders, namely the Barbados National Standards Institute, the Telecoms Unit, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, consumer groups, social commentator Mr. Corey Worrell, and the Office of Public Counsel. This was deemed crucial to ensuring that the code would be a fair and balanced framework that not only protected consumers, but also took into account the operational challenges faced by service providers. It is therefore anticipated that the code's implementation will support the gradual reduction of breaches over time. Furthermore, the policies and procedures articulated and the exposure will allow the service providers and consumers to be better informed of service level requirements. Once the code is implemented in its entirety, consumers will also receive a number of protections, including guaranteed notifications once they reach certain data usage limits, 50%, 75%, and 100%. Receipt of a summary of important information with every new plan. And this summary of important information is a one-page synopsis of the main terms and conditions of a mobile service plan. And cooling off periods. In other words, an agreed length of time during which you can decide not to buy something that you've agreed to buy. And that cooling off period will allow them to opt out of contracts negotiated over the telephone. Furthermore, the code provides clear guidance on dispute resolution, including tools that consumers can use to voice their concerns and seek redress. In order to ensure that the implementation of the code is carefully monitored and seamless, there will be a phased approach. Phase 1 commenced on October 1st. Phase 2 will commence on December 1st, both this year of course. And Phase 3 will commence on the 1st of April next year, and that will be full implementation of the code. Additionally, the code will be monitored by the stakeholders comprising representatives from Flow, Digicel, the Barbados National Standards Institute, the Office of Public Counsel, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, the Telecommunications Unit, Corey Worrell, Social Commentator, and of course the Fair Trading Commission. This group is already very familiar with the code as they were heavily involved in the consultation process leading to the code's development and conclusion. Hence, the final document was significantly influenced by recommendations from them. It's important for the public to be aware that the success of the code's implementation is not solely the responsibility of the service providers. We, as consumers of telecommunications services, also have a role to play. We must stay informed about our rights and be proactive in asserting them. We should report any violations or subpar service to the Commission and actively engage with service providers to seek resolution. We pledge to continually review, and that's we at the Commission, to continually review and update the mobile telecommunications code to keep pace with the changing landscape, and we invite all stakeholders to collaborate actively in this ongoing journey. Finally, I wish to thank the Director of Consumer Protection of the Consumer Protection Division, Mrs. David Leslie Ward, and her team, who worked tirelessly on the development of the code. Her level of commitment to this has been unbelievable. She's overcome the roadblocks and she has pressed through to see it here today. The Consumer Protection of the Committee of the Board, led by Ms. Genevieve Maynard, who supervised the work of Mrs. David Leslie Ward and her team, the CEO and other staff of the Commission, who also worked on the code, and particularly the service providers, Digicel and Cable and Wireless. This code is a voluntary code, and while we have the power under the legislation to implement and enforce codes and compel compliance, this one is really a voluntary undertaking on the part of the service providers. So I really want to thank them for agreeing to be bound by the code to offer better service to consumers. I also wish to thank finally all other stakeholders, the ones previously mentioned, and the consuming public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and you are 100% correct. Today really would not have been possible without our service providers, both Digicel and Flow, who, as you said, would have entered into this arrangement quite voluntarily. As such, I believe it is fitting to give both service providers the opportunity to say a few words, and I'll ask them to do that in alphabetical order, with Ms. Abrams going first, and
Well played.
Good morning, everyone. Protocols having been established, I have to start off by commenting that the last time that this group was gathered together, it was to announce and celebrate the commencement of local number portability in Barbados. And here we are today, gathered again to announce and celebrate a second significant event in the local telecommunications landscape in recent times, the launch of the Mobile Telecommunications Code. It is an exciting and eventful time for our industry, and Digicel is proud to be part of an evolving sector making our contribution to a progressive Barbados. To that end, I am proud to announce today that Digicel has joined hands with the Fair Trading Commission and our telecom partners in a collaborative effort to create and implement a comprehensive mobile telecommunications code. This initiative is not just a milestone for our industry, it's a testament to our commitment to transparency, fairness, and most importantly, our customers. At Digicel, our core belief is that our heart must be in every connection we make. We understand that our customers place their trust in us, not just for communications, but for a sense of reliability and safety. It is a connection that we cherish deeply and a responsibility that we take seriously. Barbados is not just where we operate, it's our home. And Digicel's participation in this mobile telecommunications code underscores the importance we place on the information we provide to our customers and on a focus on constantly examining our business practices, not only for compliance requirements, but from the lens of our customers, testing for the best customer experience and an unmatched quality of service that we would want for ourselves and for every Barbadian. We recognize that navigating the telecommunications landscape can be complex. With this endeavor, we aim to change that. We want every Digicel customer to feel confident in their choices, knowing exactly what they are purchasing and what they can expect from us. To achieve this, we are making a solemn promise that at every touch point, be it our dedicated retail staff, our informative website, our engaging social media channels, we will ensure that our customers have access to all the information that they need. We want them to be informed partners in their business with us. At Digicel, we have long demonstrated our commitment to our communities and to putting our customers first, not only through providing seamless local and international communication for all households and businesses through mobile, fixed voice, connectivity, and cloud services. From our focus on sustainability through continued transition to e-bills, to the adoption of an electric fleet as we play our part in Barbados's renewable energy and carbon neutrality goals, from supporting the national COVID-19 response by zero rating of educational websites during the pandemic and donating services and connectivity to government entities and to persons in need, to developing our nation's youth through support of sports camps and back-to-school drives, and helping protect our cultural heritage through sponsorship of community road tennis. We put our heart into every connection. In joining hands with the FTC, we are part of shaping the future of telecommunications in Barbados, a future where fairness, transparency, and the satisfaction of our customers are paramount. We're proud to share this journey with our telecom partners because, ultimately, we exist to deliver a continually enhanced experience for our valued customers. To close, rest assured, Digicel is committed to being the telecommunications provider customers can trust, rely on, and be proud to partner with. Our customers are our heartbeat. We thank our customers for choosing Digicel. Through signing on to this mobile telecommunications code, we continue to choose them every day. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Protocol being established. Flow has been a long and proud history of keeping Barbadians connected to the things that matter most. And today we are proud to be working together with our industry partners to deliver yet another historic telecoms initiative for Barbados. Today marks a significant moment as we welcome the introduction of the Mobile Telecommunications Code of Conduct, a testament to the ever-evolving landscape of telecommunications and the dedication of all those involved in advancing our local sector. So from all of us at C&W Communications, through our consumer brands, Flow Business, and C&W Business, we take this opportunity to extend our warmest congratulations to the Fair Trading Commission for their outstanding work in shaping this new framework. Your commitment to ensuring that our telecommunications industry is innovative, competitive, and customer-focused is commendable. The introduction of this code not only sets new standards for service quality, but it also emphasizes the importance of a fair and transparent operating environment, which will undoubtedly have a positive impact for both consumers and operators, and foster a more dynamic and responsive industry. It also underscores the commitment to fairness, transparency, and consumer-centric practices, ensuring that the rights and interests of our valued customers are at the forefront of our operations. As Barbados' leading telecommunications provider, we fully support this initiative, and our teams have already completed the requisite training for the implementation of this code. We have also fully aligned our operations with the code to continue to provide our customers with exceptional service and value. The introduction of this code is a significant step forward in our sector's journey to better serve the people of Barbados and enhance their connectivity experience. and we believe that open and constructive dialogue between the government, regulators, and industry players is crucial for the continued growth and innovation of the telecom sector. And we are committed to working collaboratively to ensure that this code benefits everyone involved. In essence, the code signifies the importance of a collaborative approach among regulatory authorities, telecom operators, and the public to create a dynamic and responsive telecom environment that benefits everyone. And as we move forward, we are confident that the Mobile Telecommunications Code of Conduct will serve as a foundation for ongoing collaboration, excellence, and innovation within our industry. It will set high standards for the provision of telecom services in Barbados and drive our collective efforts to enhance the connectivity experience for our citizens. Once again, we express our optimism and enthusiasm for the future of telecoms in Barbados, and we believe that the introduction of the Mobile Telecommunications Code of Conduct will foster a more competitive, customer-centric, and innovative environment. Congratulations to all who contributed to this achievement, and we look forward to a brighter, more connected future. Thank you.
I have to say that the collaborative spirit between the providers was very apparent, and their commitment and dedication to this process. Sure. But in addition to to them as partners, we also had some additional stakeholders. We had members from the Telecommunications unit, as the chair mentioned, and we also had a social commentator, Mr. Corriboro. But we also had a significant majority of the stakeholders coming out under the aegis of the Ministry of Energy and Business. With that, I would like to ask our Minister, Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummings, to give us some remarks and deliver the future address today. Minister Cummings.
Thank you very much, Davia. I think the protocol is very much established for sure by now. But I want, first of all, to commend the Fair Trading Commission and the telecoms providers who are here, who have spoken before about the level of collaboration. This is very much an important occasion today. And I first also want to recognize the work of the various agencies which fall under my ministry. Very often, when you hear about the work of the Fair Trading Commission, you think principally about things relating to regulations and utility regulations. But too often, insufficient attention is given to the important and the central consumer protection role that is also played by the officers here at the Fair Trading Commission. And together with the officers of the Fair Trading Commission, along with the Barbados National Standards Institution, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, the Office of the Public Counsel, all of whom fall under my ministry, this is a culmination of a significant body of work, and I want to commend all of you for the work that has been done to get us to this stage, along with Digicel and Flow, and I've done that in alphabetical order as well. So we can all accept that the Barbados is one of those countries where mobile phone penetration is perhaps one of the most dense per capita, certainly in the region and perhaps even beyond that. And so the importance of having a code such as this, where the two service providers have come together in a collaborative approach, along with those whose mandate rests with consumer protection, is critical for a country like Barbados. What are the contract terms that consumers enter? How do you enter into those contract terms when someone is calling you over the phone with an exciting sounding promotion that you in the moment sign up for, and then thereafter may have second thoughts about because you weren't necessarily thinking it through fully? How do we then have a mechanism in place that allows for us to have both promotion on the one hand by the service providers and simultaneously consumer protection on the other hand? And so I want to suggest that it is this kind of collaboration among service providers and the consumer protection agencies, including those that fall under my ministry, that perhaps can be a landmark across the broader community in a range of areas to ensure that consumers are at all times central to the decision making and that there are mechanisms that allow for consumer redress. The Office of the Public Counsel is already there. The Consumer Affairs Tribunal, which also falls under my ministry, that is very much also there. And we want to ensure that consumers continue to be at the center of much of the work that we do. This code itself, therefore, represents a vision of the telecommunications industry that prioritizes those needs. It prioritizes those rights. While it supports competitiveness and innovation, it also ensures that consumers enjoy the transparency and fairness that we all aspire to while using those telecommunications services. In terms of the telecommunications sector more broadly, it is ever evolving. The technology is forever changing. We're seeing new products that we never thought we needed being entered on the market, and we're buying them at a fast rate. And so as the sector changes, our regulatory frameworks must also keep keep a pace with these developments. And so while our work here today is important, it does not and it cannot end here. Our work must continue to keep pace with the rate of evolution of innovation in telecoms and allow us to evolve over time. And so we are committed as a ministry and as a team to continue the work through monitoring and adapting the code at times, as times evolve, as innovation and technology evolves, and then moving forward in the same spirit of collaboration that we have seen that has brought us to this stage today, to ensure that consumers and our agencies are at all times working in the best interests of all of us. In closing, because these are just very few remarks, and I'm sure that there are a number of questions that you want to get to as we go into the details of the code itself, I want to express my support for all of you. I've already spoken about the work that was done by the FTC, the digital service providers, the Flow team, but also my own officers. But I want to recognize also the social media commentators who have played a role in this. Mr. Corey Will, he's here with us today, and I'm very much appreciative of that. Oftentimes, social media can be used for all kinds of things which are not always very positive. This is one of those times where social media has had a positive impact on the development of an issue which has been important for Barbadians across the spectrum. And I would want to encourage people to use the platforms that are available to them in ways that can be as constructive as we have seen here today. And I want to recognize that work. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. And I specifically also want to close by thanking Davia for the work that she has done in anchoring this, and also the committee led by the board, and of course the chairman of the FTC and the CEO of the FTC as well. Thank you all very much.
Minister, my CEO sometimes laughs at me when I tell her this, but as a 16-year-old, I'm not sure if everybody in here remembers when we used to have text messaging. Remember, there was a certain amount of characters that you had, and if you went over by a full stop, that would send you into another text message. And you know you would have a limited amount, so you would want to make sure you use it up. And I remember then, again, when we went from text messages to BBM.
Yeah.
The Blackberry
Blackberry.
Messenger. You remember that?
Absolutely.
I remember that clearly, but as I said, I'm only 16 years old and I barely have any recollection of it. But I then remembered, I almost, only a short few years ago when someone said to me, I'm going to save on WhatsApp, and I said, what is the WhatsApp? And now, you know, I feel as though I can't live without it. So it is with that, these changes, these technological advances, that we recognize that we really needed to address the mobile telecommunications sector. And when I came in 2017, this was one of the main things on the agenda for myself. And I'm sure that everybody today must ask the question, why a code? Why would you conceptualize a code? And the main reason behind that is because in consumer protection, a code is basically a minimum set of standards that provides guidelines which can be used to govern the relationship between the service providers and consumers. And this is not just in Barbados, but this is internationally. Codes are used for this purpose. So it was with that that the Mobile Telecommunications Code 2023 was developed. When we wanted to start the development of the code, it was very important for not just myself, but for the team who deals with the calls on a daily basis. We wanted to make sure that the code would trace and track the customer journey from inception. So that first point, when you first become aware of an offer, with the advertisements, right down to your post-purchase where you're needing that continuous and ongoing support. The Mobile Telecommunications Code 2023 tracks those issues and everything in between. So today, as I highlight the main elements of the code, I'm going to take you on the customer journey a la the Telecommunications Code. The code is essentially made up of about 32 pages and is divided into 7 sections. The first section was really spelled out by the chairman, I won't go over it, but essentially it covers matters pertaining to the preliminaries. So it sets out the name of the code, the objective, the scopes, those matters of that nature already spelled out by my chair. And I'm going to skip section 2, and I'm going to close to section 3. Because it is that section 3 which really deals with advertisements. So that is the first touch point where you get the consumers really coming into contact with the service provider. So at that point, our main impetus within the code is to make sure that the advertisements are clear. We want consumers to be able to make an informed decisions. So for example, we want to make sure that any disclaimers that are made in an advertisement are clearly labeled. We don't want that in the fine print, we want that to be boldly stated. And one of the main contents of this particular section on advertisements is that disclaimers cannot nullify the main message. So an example of this would be where you might see someone, not anyone in this room, but someone advertising, let's say, free phones. And then in the small print, you might see something that says only for a select set of customers. So those are things which are no longer going to be permitted within the context of the code. So now that we've seen an advertisement, we've decided that we're going to go with either one of the providers. Our next step is really having that understanding of some of the general principles that really need to be included in the code. So some of these general principles, there are 2 main general principles. So the first one is making sure that there is clear communication, and that's done in 2 ways. First, we want to make sure that the information provided to consumers, especially when it is delivered in a written format, is done in plain language. So we don't want any legalese, no offense to the lawyers. We don't want any technical jargon included in those communications. We want it to be in plain, simple language that anyone can pick up and be able to read it. The next main aspect of clear communication is having information in writing. So this is the major change. And this is where you will see the inception of the summary of important information that the chair would have mentioned. So that is the 1-page synopsis, which will allow consumers to have a real snapshot of what is included in their plan. So the information is supposed to be standardized. So whether you go to one provider or the other, the SII, as we call it at the FTC, should look the exact same. The information may vary, but there are sections that are supposed to be mandatory. So you're supposed to know how many minutes you have, how much your data allottage is, what is the cost of exceeding your data plan. Those are the things that are supposed to be included in that SII, and I want to remind you that that is supposed to be given to the consumer before they enter into the contract, so you can really have an opportunity to familiarize yourself with the offer. So once you've gotten that SII, the next thing you might decide, okay, I'm doing this thing, I'm going forward with this. Now you come to the contract section. The contract section, so remember we said that the SII was basically a 1-page document. The SII, the service providers have full latitude. They can go with God on that one. It can be as long or as short as they wish it to be, but there are certain sections that are mandatory. The information to be included in the contract is stipulated within the code. And obviously if there's significant changes, so for example, if there are any limitations on use. In addition to that, are there will the contract be automatically renewed? Those are things that must be included within the context of that contract. So now we are at the stage where we've decided we're going to get this package. We've gone with the package now. What is the next main concern of the consumer? We want to stay within our plan. We don't want to exceed our minutes because nobody wants to pay more than they have to. So that is where you will get those user-based notifications coming in, where the service providers will provide the notifications at the threshold mentioned by the chairman, which are at 50%, 75%, and then 100%. So we are paying our bills, we're staying within our packages, and we are all happy until something happens, of course. And then we need some extra support. So if there is a matter that arises and there needs to be complaints that are handled coming out of the code, the service providers have agreed, as stated in the code, to acknowledge all complaints within 2 days, 2 business days that is. And investigations are supposed to be completed within 10 business days thereof. Now, if for some reason there needs to be an extension at that time, that is certainly allowed, but the service providers will reach out to the consumers within that same period before the expiry of the 10 days and advise the consumer that there needs to be a further extension to allow them to investigate the matter. So I know we're at the point where we had a complaint is resolved, we're all happy. I know the one question that I'm going to be asked, so I'm going to try to preempt that question. Everybody's going to be saying, but what are the proverbial teeth? We do have teeth. So it really depends, the action to be taken by the commission. There are a wide range, as you know, of enforcement tools included in the Consumer Protection Act. And if the offense or the breach that has been raised by the consumer is analogous to something that is within our Consumer Protection Act, we have a wide range of options, including taking that service provider to court. Now, we don't have those types of interactions, I must say. I try to give Jack or Jill her proverbial jacket because I noticed that we're all ladies on the panel. But whenever we reach out to the service providers, we usually do receive the outcomes that we believe are fair in the circumstances. So I don't think that we would ever have to go to court, but you know, my grandmother always says what does not happen in a year can happen in a day, and if we need to, it is there. Within the code, we also can issue informal warnings, formal warnings, and finally, in the code, if we find that a particular provider is not following the information included in the code, the commission has the discretion to issue a public notice advising the public that the provider is not compliant with the code. So it is with that is my overview. Those are the key elements of the Mobile Telecommunications Code, and I open to any questions that you may have.
Yes, hi, good morning. Paul Romanzi from Nature News.
We didn't expect you to go first, Paul.
I know, brain already.
I have a few questions, however, I was threatened against only coloring within the parameters of this press conference, so I will therefore want to ask 3. Firstly, how does this differ from the current best practices of the telecommunications providers at this point? We see the codes here, but what are the fundamental differences from what you were doing prior to the codes? And secondly, in terms of, is this going to require a retraining of staff of sorts as well to begin the implementation phase of these codes?
Okay, so in relation to your first question, there are a number of differences. So for example, previously when you went to purchase a plan of any kind, usually you might go, there might be a small brochure or something like that, and the information is usually communicated verbally. Now what the commission is saying that instead of communicating that information verbally, you must communicate that information in writing. And there is a significant benefit to that, because when communication is provided to you in a verbal form. You know, sometimes you feel as, oh, this sounds really good. But when you have an opportunity to actually look at it, you can really consider and assess whether the plan is actually suitable for your needs. And this is given to the consumer upfront. So the consumer doesn't have to make a decision at that point in time. It gives them the option to be able to shop around without necessarily getting into contract at that first instance. In addition, the user-based notifications. I wouldn't wish to speak on behalf of the service providers, but with respect to those new notifications, those will be standard. So I think that sometimes there are issues, other times they might not, but with this new systems, this will be a requirement, and there will be sanctions if the service provider does not issue those notifications as stated. Now, some of the other things within the code are best practices, as you would have identified. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that these are standardized so that it is not just given to you and not me, or someone else and not the other. We want to make sure that this is the customer experience for every and all customers. So it was standardized and make sure that there are minimum standards for all two providers. So whereas one company might have been doing some things and the other might be doing others, no, there is this standard so that across the board, all consumers receive this standard of protection.
And the second part of the question, I guess, the
Oh,
service
yeah,
providers
yeah.
can respond to this.
Recently asked about the training, if training was
Oh, yeah,
required.
so I think I would have mentioned, in my remarks that we've started the training, actually I completed as well. So it's for everybody at all levels of the organization. So, I mean, not only retail staff, but like I am in supermarket, people always come to me to ask the questions. So everybody is going to be retooled, retrained. And as we spoke about the phasing, this allows us to get certain things in place. So as it now stands for Flow, we do would send a text to say when you've reached a limit. It is not consistent, and we're aware. It is not purposely done. It's something that's a systems issue. So those are the things we're working on in the back end to ensure that certainly by next year in April, you will always be notified, and it's a consistent thing going across the board. Yeah.
You referred to best practices, so naturally each service provider would have practices that they employ now. The code itself, there is a retraining in terms of the specific provisions, how they juxtapose against our current practices, what needs to be changed, updated. And then two, there is a piece around a lot of the requirements of the code, or several of the later stage requirements of the code, require us to change our systems. So the capacity of our system to send certain notifications and so on. Training our staff in those new systems, the requirements and the provisions to make sure that we're compliant with the code, voluntary or not. That will be one of the things that we'll need to engage ourselves on. But similar to Flow, in terms of our staff body, our retail staff, we've already commenced the training of our persons in the code and its provisions.
If I can also speak to your first question. So for some time now, I believe perhaps around 2006, the Commission instituted standards of service, and that is on utility regulation. Those are mandatory standards, but it is exclusively in relation to fixed line service, because that is under the regulations within the Utilities Regulation Act that speaks to the dominant carrier. So we're only able to regulate as it relates to that. There's no recognition that mobile and data services are a quickly evolving service that's being provided to Barbados and Barbadians. And as such, there was that vacuum that we believe that we needed to address. And this is the means by which we're addressing that with some form of standards. Recognizing full well that the Cabinet of Barbados has also agreed with the Commission to regulate mobile and data services, and that therefore is a work in progress.
Final question from me. I know the term volunteering or voluntaristic within the codes. I'm just curious as to why not just go the extra step and make it legally binding, make it legislation.
Do you want to ask that, David?
answer that.
And then I'll come at the end as well.
That's a very good question, actually. But the answer is really simple. Some of the requirements within the code exceed what is permitted within the Consumer Protection Act. So it would not be possible for us, with the present legislation that we have, to make the code into regulations. So that is one of the real reasons why we've done it at this level on a voluntary basis. We are at the Commission going through a process of reviewing the Consumer Protection Act, and once we update the legislation, perhaps that will be a consideration at a later time. But the main emphasis is that this is usually what happens with codes, not just in Barbados, but some of the other jurisdictions that I've observed as well. You do have these voluntary codes, and the contents of the code usually exceed what is already placed within the legislation. Sorry.
It's a really good question, Colville. I don't see BNSI, either Hayden or, oh, there you are. I don't see anybody from BNSI here, so neither Hayden nor Fabian are here, but what we typically would have at the level of the BNSI always, using the consumer protection legislation and other related pieces of legislation administered by the Barbados National Standards Institution, would always be a combination of voluntary and mandatory codes. The voluntary codes are always compiled on the basis of, yes, best practices, and typically they're developed bringing a wide range of stakeholders together, just like you've done this one here today, and you've come together and agreed to a baseline that you intend and agree to meet. If you don't meet those, I think Divya in her outline then would have detailed, with some detail, with some degree of granularity, what then the steps would be. And we don't necessarily want to go to court, that's not necessarily where we would end up, but that there is a commitment that the various service providers in the various sectors would have given by way of the code. We have that, for example, in terms of the voluntary codes for lots of construction materials, for instance. You have that also in terms of health, some certain products. I think very recently you had a discussion on front of package labeling. Those are either mandatory or voluntary standards, and even in other sectors, you have a combination of voluntary and mandatory standards coexisting side by side. They really do represent a commitment by all of the parties to work towards going in a singular direction. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Just one other one for me. There, again, to the service providers, I note that Flow and Digital, again, alphabetically.
That's not alphabetically.
They noted that they would have to put some system upgrades in place. Is there going to be a cost attached to getting these codes put in place?
You plan to finance it for free?
And if you could give us an idea what the cost, have you done an assessment as to what the cost is going to be?
No, we haven't. But of course, with any upgrade of this magnitude, there will be a cost attached. We would have budgeted for it for next year for sure. Some of it we've done out of our plans for this year, but we've certainly put it in place in the budget to accommodate any changes, any system changes that we'd have to do locally. Yeah.
Will these cost attached be passed on to the consumer?
Just responding to the first question. So yes, of course there would be a cost attached to any sort of system upgrade requirements. And for Digicel as well, we also are a regional entity. So the way in which we operate, there are some similarities across our markets and uniquenesses in certain markets as well. So any upgrades or changes that we contemplate here may have to be viewed in the context of a wider regional systems framework. So that needs to be considered and contemplated. Happily, the code itself is phased, and those systems upgrades will impact the later stages of implementation and have to be considered as part of our typical budgeting cycle and so on. But again, being here signifies that we're prepared to do the work to understand what is required and get it in place. We're just happy that it is indeed phased. The second question was around cost to consumer. I mean, there are always going to be costs to doing business. This will not be a separate line item that needs to be added on to the consumer space. The cost of doing business is constantly reviewed, not only in our industry, in every industry.
That's a brilliant answer for you, Corbin. That's a brilliant answer for you. I love it. I love it.
But if you could have, that'd be great.
If you could have what? Answer the same thing. I mean, we're both telecoms providers in Barbados, and we're constantly reviewing. And it doesn't have. I'm sure that any change in the price would have nothing to do with this. It's something even bigger than this. The code, I think, is. I've gone through it. I've really went through it. I actually did the training. Very fair. Easy to take on board, and as Natalie did rightfully say, because it's phased, it allows us an opportunity to take our time to get it right, so that in the 6 months, within the 6 months, we have it together. So yeah, I wouldn't say that we are going to be looking to raise prices at this point in time because of the code. No, no, Colville.
Colville, his headline. Yeah.
To the service providers, I know for years, advertising has been, it's, as we use the term, puffery a lot of the time.
It's what?
Puffery.
Puffery, what's that?
Basically, when you're advertising something, as you said, you need charges, and sometimes, the terms.
Never heard that term before.
It's an advertising term. Right, so how will that transition, how do you all feel that transition will be made now that there are no read the fine print part of it? How do you all feel that transition will?
So we are going to work. So this, I mean, we've come in this with our hearts open to work with the Fair Trading Commission. We both have advertising agencies that do our work. We have already informed them of the changes and the code, so we're working with them closely. I mean, there's no feeling per se, like we're happy to, this covers both us and this covers the consumer. I don't know if people understand this. So even asking for things to be written out, sometimes you tell people things verbally, they forget and they say you never told them. So it is also covering us as well and protecting us, so that when we write things, we have things in writing, on both sides we're covered. And we are looking forward to working with the advertising agencies to ensure that we follow the code very closely. Yeah.
Let me take this away from the. Yeah. Let me get them a little ease here, because let me speak from a Ministry of Consumer Affairs perspective, because that's really what this is, and I don't want this to be turned into an us versus them, a consumer affair, a consumer issue versus a service provider issue, an advertiser issue versus a public issue. That's not what this is. This is really, I think just a few weeks ago, Corey, you were there as well, when we launched a financial literacy program, for instance. One of the things that in the margins of that I spoke about was the fact that advertising, which I'm now hearing is puffery, the term being used there is puffery, typically would have these big headlines, they entice you in, and then when you come in, then the specifics being found in the fine print, or that will be told to you when you actually enter the contractual arrangement, you haven't seen or you haven't understood. That's exactly the kind of thing that a code like this, as it relates to the telecommunications service providers, aims to make sure that we address. So that you are no longer being drawn in by the bright lights and the glitter and the glam, and being pulled into the assumption that you're going to get something very quickly, you don't have to do very much for it, it's a free phone, it's this. There is a code of conduct that the two service providers have signed up for. They have agreed to meet certain best practices. They're not putting it in fine print in a way that then it is hidden. They're making sure that, as Davia has just outlined, it is clearly articulated in visible, printed terms in the contractual relationship between the consumer and the service provider, so that there is no puffery, as you, my friend, have just described. And I think that's something that's to be hailed as a good thing. It's a positive thing that telecoms have done that, and we want to be able to ensure that that is done across all industries in Barbados, where the bright lights and the glitz and the glamour don't really just pull you in, and then you get caught in terms that may not be as favorable as they appeared to be at the outset. But also the other part of it, I think all of us have gone into our inboxes or opened a mobile telecoms bill on any given month and seen a bill that is far in excess of what we thought. The notion that you are being told you are at a certain percentage of what your data plan has allowed is also a good thing, and we want to be able to recognize the two service providers for coming forward to say that. If I know that I'm at 75% or 100%, then I'm not doing anything beyond that. And then the other part of that is the roaming charges, for instance. When we turn on a phone in certain other jurisdictions and all of a sudden you pick up data charges and you are well in excess based on the connection relationships, you don't want that. So the communication coming from the service providers on what your data package allows and what you have used is critical. And there's a responsibility on the service providers, yes, but with all rights being given to people, there come responsibilities. And it is our responsibility also to make sure that we are reading what is given to us, we're absorbing what is being explained to us, and we're staying within the limits of the plans for which we have signed up. So that is the good thing that comes out of the work that has been done by all of these partners here. Yeah?
Any other questions?
Yes.
Wait, Colville, or time so?
None of the minister mentioned it.
You don't bother with me today.
The marketing obviously is connected to your bottom line of any business, and the glitz and glamour, as the minister would have summed it up in an advertising, is what pulls in your customer base, etc. Now, how do you foresee this changing the landscape of marketing for telecommunications companies?
I'm going to let Davia speak to that, but Colville, I am so sure that you really won't go there either, because what they have put out there, and Natalie described it as their heart being in every consumer, everything that they do. What they're putting out there, what they're marketing now, is a commitment to consumers. That's what they have marketed. They're not coming out there with false advertising anymore. They're not coming out with glitz and glamour, even though they probably will. But what they're marketing as the two entities is a commitment to consumers as they pursue their legitimate business. And I don't know if we should make that into something that it really isn't either. But Davia, over to you. Wait.
I wanted to make the point that this code has been an ongoing process. We certainly did not arrive at this point on October the 1st of this year. We have been in discussions with this code over a period of time. And I can tell you that over the last since the beginning of the financial year, because we have a team that reviews the daily newspapers for advertisements to make sure to see whether there's any misleading or deceptive information included in that. And I can tell you that we have found none with any of these service providers for the entire financial year. So I would have to say that even though the code has been the implementation of the code was official on October the 1st, I believe that the lessons learned started from many years ago when we first started this process. So I want to make it clearly stated that as far as acting in good faith, the service providers has done so, and I can report with confidence. My team can also come in here and tell you the same exact thing, that there has been no ads found in breach for any of these service providers. Okay, so there being no further questions,
No, actually, that's some questions you after.
That was a lie.
There being no further questions, I want to thank all of the members of the panel for being here today. Minister Cummings, thank you so much. I have to also thank the chairman of the FTC for her unwavering support, as well as the board, as well as my committee chair, Commissioner Maynard. I call her all the time. Sometimes I call her at the most inopportune times, and she always answers the phone. Thank you very much for that. And to the CEO for her unwavering support, as well as the consumer protection team. Please allow me a moment to mention everybody's name. Samantha, my administrative assistant, Julia, consumer protection officer, as well as my team downstairs. They are presently preparing for another event that we have planned today. Alia and Antoinette, thank you very much for your dedication to the process. As a matter of fact, they're so dedicated, they're downstairs and they did not come upstairs as originally planned. I also have to thank the members of the senior management team, all the persons who read the code the million times that I asked them. Thank you to the service providers, because today would not have been possible without you. Natalie and Marilyn, your teams will tell you, I probably confused them some of the times, but they always took the calls, and it has always been done with a spirit of collaboration. And to the stakeholders, thank you very much, Corey, who has also willingly indicated that he will share his platform and he will actually use it to promote the code. So, Minister, thank you for observing that. And also to the BNSI, the Office of the Public Counsel, the Telecommunications Unit, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Bertram, Margaret, I thank you. Everybody for your attendance, and to the team members who are not necessarily in the Consumer Protection Department, but from other departments who are assisting, which is essentially the whole commission today. Thank you so much. And I have to say one special thank you to the PR consultant, Ms. Sarah Odell, who has supported me so much. Sarah, thank you for your unwavering support. Thank you for calling me at 9 o'clock last night. And when I called you, every single time you always answered the phone. So thank you for your assistance. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just asking everyone to prepare for a group shot on the outside.
No, we need some refreshments.
Oh,
When
here.
you
Okay.
Google, YouTube. Right. So we can refresh all of these Christmas decorations.
Okay.